Welcome to Real Body Count, where we delve into historical events that have had a devastating impact on human life. Today, we turn our attention to one of the most catastrophic natural disasters of the 20th century, the 1931 China floods. This event, often overshadowed by other major historical events of the era, remains one of the deadliest natural disasters in recorded history. The 1931 China floods, also known as the Central China floods, were a series of devastating floods that occurred in China between July and November 1931. The disaster primarily affected the Yangtze River and its tributaries, as well as the Huai River and the Yellow River. The scale of this catastrophe was unprecedented, affecting an area of nearly 200,000 square kilometers, roughly the size of England and half of Scotland combined. To understand the magnitude of this disaster, we need to examine the unique confluence of factors that led to such widespread flooding. The year 1931 saw an unusual weather pattern in China. The winter of 1930 to 1931 had been particularly severe, with heavy snowfall in central China. As spring arrived, the snow melted rapidly, causing the first wave of flooding. This was followed by an exceptionally wet spring, with rainfall totals in some areas reaching 3 times the usual amount. The situation was further exacerbated by a series of cyclones that hit the region in July. In that month alone, 9 cyclones made landfall in China, far exceeding the usual 2 or 3. This extraordinary series of weather events led to what some meteorologists have called a 1 in 1,000 year flood. The Yangtze River, the longest river in Asia and the 3rd longest in the world, bore the brunt of this catastrophic weather. The river's basin, home to nearly 1/3 of China's population at the time, became the epicenter of the disaster. Cities along the river, including Wuhan, Nanjing, and Chongqing, were inundated. In Wuhan, the water level reached an astonishing 16 meters above the average, submerging vast areas of the city. The Yellow River in the north and the Huai River in the central region also experienced severe flooding. The Yellow River, often called China's sorrow due to its propensity for devastating floods, lived up to its name in 1931. The Huai River Basin, a densely populated agricultural region, was transformed into a vast inland sea. Now, let's address the central question of this series. What was the real body count of the 1931 China floods? Determining the exact death toll from this disaster is a challenging task for historians and researchers. The chaos of the floods, the vast area affected, and the limitations of record-keeping in 1931 China all contribute to this difficulty. Additionally, the flood's impact extended beyond immediate drownings to deaths from disease, starvation, and exposure in the aftermath. The most widely cited estimate for the death toll is between 1 million and 4 million people. This staggering range reflects the uncertainty surrounding the true impact of the disaster. Some sources put the number even higher, with estimates reaching up to 6 million deaths. To put these numbers into perspective, even the lower end of this range would make the 1931 floods one of the deadliest natural disasters in recorded history. The upper end would place it as possibly the deadliest natural disaster ever recorded, surpassing even the Great Flood of 1887 in China, which is estimated to have killed between 900,000 and 2 million people. The immediate causes of death during the floods were numerous. Drowning was the most direct cause, as rapidly rising waters caught many people unprepared. Entire villages were submerged, often with little warning. Collapsing buildings claimed many lives. As floodwaters undermined foundations and weakened structures, many people were crushed or trapped in falling buildings. Landslides triggered by the heavy rains and swollen rivers swept away homes and people, particularly in mountainous areas. However, the death toll from the immediate flooding was only part of the story. In the aftermath of the floods, a series of secondary disasters unfolded, each taking its own toll. Disease became rampant in the flood-affected areas. Waterborne illnesses such as cholera and typhoid fever spread rapidly in the unsanitary conditions. With medical facilities destroyed or inaccessible, these diseases claimed countless lives. Starvation became a major killer in the weeks and months following the floods. The disaster struck at harvest time, destroying crops and food stores across a vast area. An estimated 53 million acres of crops were destroyed, leading to widespread famine. Exposure to the elements caused many deaths, particularly among those displaced by the floods. With millions millions left homeless, many succumbed to hypothermia or heat-related illnesses. The flooding also led to a surge in waterborne parasites. Schistosomiasis, a disease caused by parasitic worms, saw a significant increase in the aftermath of the floods. This disease, while not immediately fatal, causes long-term health problems and can lead to death if untreated. Beyond the immediate human toll, the 1931 floods had far-reaching consequences that indirectly contributed to loss of life. The destruction of infrastructure, including roads, bridges, and railways, hampered rescue and relief efforts. This isolation left many communities to fend for themselves, likely increasing the death toll. The economic impact of the floods was severe. Millions of people lost their livelihoods, leading to increased poverty and vulnerability to disease and malnutrition in the years that followed. The floods also had significant environmental consequences. Erosion, changes in river courses, and the destruction of natural habitats had long-term effects on agriculture and food security in the region. The scale of the disaster was so immense that it overwhelmed the capacity of both the Chinese government and international aid organizations to respond effectively. The China Flood Relief Commission was established to coordinate relief efforts, but its resources were dwarfed by the magnitude of the catastrophe. Foreign aid was slow to arrive and limited in scope. The League of Nations did send a team of experts to assess the situation, but their report, while comprehensive, came too late to significantly impact the immediate relief efforts. The United States and other countries provided some aid, but the global economic depression limited the resources available for international assistance. The Chinese government, already weakened by years of internal conflict and the ongoing Chinese Civil War, struggled to mount an effective response. The nationalist government, led by Chiang Kai-shek, was criticized for its slow and inadequate reaction to the crisis. This failure likely contributed to the erosion of public support for the nationalist regime in the years that followed. The floods also had significant political ramifications. The Communist Party of China, then a small opposition group, used the disaster and the government's inadequate response as propaganda tools. They organized their own relief efforts in some areas, gaining support among the affected populations. While it would be an overstatement to say that the 1931 floods directly led to the communist victory in 1949, the disaster certainly played a role in shaping public perception of the rival political factions. The 1931 floods also left a lasting impact on China's approach to flood control and water management. In the years following the disaster, major infrastructure projects were undertaken to mitigate the risk of future flooding. These included the construction of new dams, levees, and flood diversion areas. However, some of these projects, particularly those implemented after the establishment of the People's Republic of China in 1949, would themselves become sources of controversy and ecological disruption. One of the most significant long-term outcomes of the 1931 floods was the eventual construction of the Three Gorges Dam on the Yangtze River. While this project wasn't completed until 2009, its origins can be traced back to the desire to prevent a recurrence of the 1931 disaster. The dam, while effective in controlling floods, has been criticized for its environmental impact and the displacement of over 1 million people during its construction. The 1931 floods also had a profound impact on Chinese culture and collective memory. The disaster became a powerful symbol of the nation's vulnerability to natural forces and the need for modernization and development. It inspired works of literature, art, and film, helping to ensure that the memory of the catastrophe would be preserved for future generations. In recent years, there has been renewed interest among historians in studying the 1931 floods. This research has not only sought to more accurately determine the death toll but also to understand the broader social, economic, and environmental contexts of the disaster. Scholars have examined how factors such as deforestation, population pressure, and river management practices may have exacerbated the impact of the floods. These studies have also highlighted the resilience of the affected communities. Despite the enormous death toll and widespread destruction, many areas were able to recover and rebuild. The disaster led to innovations in agriculture, water management, and community organization that would influence Chinese development for decades to come. As we reflect on the 1931 China floods, it's important to consider the lessons this disaster holds for our modern world. In an era of climate change, With extreme weather events becoming more frequent, the events of 1931 serve as a sobering reminder of nature's potential for destruction. The importance of sustainable development, effective disaster preparedness, and robust early warning systems are all underscored by this historical calamity. Moreover, the 1931 floods highlight the complex interplay between natural disasters and human society. The death toll was not simply a result of the volume of water, but of social, economic, and political factors that left millions vulnerable. Issues of poverty, inadequate infrastructure, and political instability all contributed to the scale of the tragedy. As we conclude this episode of Real Body Count, we're left to grapple with the enormous human cost of the 1931 China floods. The millions of lives lost represent not just a demographic statistic, but a profound tragedy that affected countless families and altered the course of a nation. Each number in the death toll represents a unique individual, with hopes, dreams, and loved ones, all swept away by the floodwaters. The 1931 floods serve as a powerful reminder of both the destructive potential of natural disasters and the importance of societal preparedness and resilience. As we face the environmental challenges of the 21st century, the lessons of this historical calamity remain deeply relevant. Thank you for joining us for this exploration of one of history's deadliest natural disasters. If you find value in these historical investigations and want to support the creation of more content like this, please consider donating to $Quaver911 on Cash App. Your support enables us to continue shedding light on these critical, often overlooked aspects of history. Until next time, try to enjoy the daylight.